Hello, hello, hello! Satam Patak, happy Friday! I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and every Friday at 5 o'clock Croatia time, I answer 5 questions from people who have sent them in on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, expatincroatia.com, email, my consulting sessions, and people who write them in Sharpie on my window. We are not live, and usually we are live, but it's weird doing what I do and being here and talking to you guys every week, sometimes multiple times a week, because I'm very transparent. I share, what's going on and tell you about my journey, and I'm really happy to do that. But sometimes there's stuff that happens, because that's just life, that I need to keep to myself, and this is one of those times. So I got a urgent matter in my personal life that I need to attend to, and so because of that, I won't be able to do live 5 question Fridays for the next 3 weeks, and that's just it. That's all I can possibly say about it, but I'm okay. It's a challenge. I'd rather these things not be things that I have to do, but they are things that I have to do. So I need to kind of take the time to step away from work and focus on this thing, and then I will be back in April. But I didn't want to miss out on doing at least one for you guys, so here it is, a pre-recorded 5 question Friday, which is okay because there are lots of people who aren't able to tune in at 5 o'clock on Friday, and so they watch it the next day or the days after. So here's your questions, guys, and I know that we've got a few fun things planned for the other 2 Fridays where I'm going to be out, so there will be something in its place. Thank you so much for your understanding and patience and support. Let's get started, shall we? So our first question comes from Olha. This is through our 5 question Friday form. So I'm driving a car with Ukrainian number plates that belongs to my mother, who's currently living in the UK. It's been almost 6 months since the car is here, and I assume I have to register it in Croatia. Is it possible to get either temporary registration or just a regular one for someone else's car in Croatia? I have the car's passport. So there's a few things to unpack from this. First of all, you, as a Ukrainian person, if you are on temporary protection and you have a car here, you are not required to formally import it and register your car in Croatia as long as your Ukrainian registration is valid. If you are on a digital nomad permit, this does not apply to you. It's only for Ukrainians who are on temporary protection that have this right. Now, I don't know if she's on temporary protection, but it does not matter because her mother is not. Her mother's living in the UK. You can't register a car for someone who is not living in Croatia. Now, you could register a car on someone else's behalf if you gave them what's called punomoć, which is like a power of attorney so that they can act as your proxy. But in this case, that wouldn't work because her mother's the one who owns the car. Her mother does not live in Croatia. So, in summary, I think that Olha should have her mother sell her the car, get the car in her name, and then she can register it here in Croatia if she wishes. If she's on temporary protection, then she can wait until the Ukraine registration expires. So, as far as the resources, we have our Ukrainian residence guide, and we also have our guide on how to register a car. So if you want any of those guides, just send us a DM. We'd be happy to send it to you. Okay, thank you so much, Olha. Our next question is from Lynette. She sent this in on email. What happens to property owned by a non-citizen if there is no will? This is an excellent question. I was recently chatting with one of our lawyers about it, so this is very timely. Let's put it that way. Okay. In Croatia, property and assets immediately go to the next of kin. That's how it works by default, regardless of whether or not you have a will. If you do have a will and you don't like your next of kin, then that's a whole other kettle of fish. That's a can of worms. We're just going to set that aside because that is just too big of a box to open right now. Now, she's asking if a non-citizen dies, what happens to their property? It depends. It depends on whether or not the government feels like they can easily find your next of kin. So if you don't have a will and you're a foreigner living in Croatia and you're not married, you don't have kids, you don't have anybody in Croatia, it's just you, like me. I am just me. If I were to die right now without a will in place, then what would happen is my property would go to the state. That's what would happen, essentially. So if you're a foreigner living in Croatia and you want your stuff to go to somebody, make a will. For sure make a will. Because if you don't make a will, it's going to go to the state. And if you don't want your stuff to go to the state, you got to be prepared. So I would suggest in that case, if you are planning to make a will and not give your stuff to your next of kin, then definitely use a lawyer for that to make sure that it all checks out. Wills are complicated. They can be very, very simple. It really depends on everyone's situation. I think with foreigners, it's a little bit more complicated. And because you're dealing not just with the laws of Croatia, you're also dealing with the laws of your country of nationality. You're also dealing with the laws of the country where you have assets. So let's say, for example, you have a property in the UK, but your nationality is American and you're living in Croatia. That is 3 countries' laws with regards to wills and probate that have to be taken into consideration. So if you'd like to chat with a lawyer about how they can prepare a will for you that will be valid and recognized and all that kind of stuff, just send us a DM and we'll be happy to connect you with somebody who can help. Okay, so next, this comes from Kathy. Hey, Kathy. Kathy's one of our biggest fans. I got to meet Kathy last year in Rijeka for the first time, and we've been communicating for years. It was pretty neat. It's like, I feel like I've known you forever. She submitted this on 5 Question Friday forum. As you know, I live in Rijeka with a temporary residence. Since Croatia has joined the Schengen zone, is it possible, Since Croatia joined the Schengen zone, it is possible that I will be away from my apartment 6 months at a time. Is it worth my while or possible to list my apartment on Airbnb? What must I do to be legal renter for Airbnb in Croatia? Well, there's a few things to unpack here. Now, I do know that Kathy is applying for citizenship, and that is applicable in this situation. As a third country national, which anyone who is not an EU citizen is a third country national, you cannot rent out your property on Airbnb as an individual. Only Croatians and EU citizens can do that. So if you wanted to do that as a third country national, you would have to open up a company. But to open up a company without the right to work, you'd have to hire 3 full-time Croatians, invest 200,000 kuna in the business in the equivalent of whatever the euro is. I think it comes out to about $30,000. So in Kathy's situation, this does not make any sense to do. She should wait until she's a Croatian citizen, hopefully this year, and then she can let it out as a citizen. But in her current situation where she's a third country national still here on temporary residence, she should not do that. The other thing I want to call out is she said that it's possible she's going to be away from her apartment for 6 months at a time. If you are on temporary residence and you are a non-EU national, that is too long. Only only EU citizens can be gone from Croatia for 6 months during the year. If you are anybody else, then you have to be in Croatia. Well, you can't leave Croatia for more than 90 days in 1 year, and you can't leave Croatia for more than 1 month at a time. Otherwise, they can cancel your residence. Now, she's eventually going to get citizenship, so it's a bit of a gray area, and it's probably not going to be that big of a deal. But I just wanted to make sure that I called that out because it's important. I try and be holistic and give you the whole picture, so I wanted to make sure I communicated that. We do have a guide on how to legally rent out accommodation that goes into all the details, taxes, all that kind of stuff, step-by-step instructions. So just send us a DM. We'd be more than happy to share it with you. All right, next this comes from another big fan, one of my favorite people, Katie. This came in on Instagram. What happens if MOP has a delay in processing your application to such a degree that your foreign document expires? Oops, sorry guys, I hit this right button and made it jiggle a little bit. Yeah, this is a great question. And I don't have like a strict, like all the time across the board answer for you. I've seen a variety of situations. Okay, logically speaking, it shouldn't matter. If you turn in your documents and they are not expired when you turn them in, they should not expire. They should be valid at the time that you turn in your application, regardless of whether that's residence or citizenship. So it doesn't matter how long they take to process it. It was valid when you turned it in, and that's all that should matter. Of course, this is Croatia, and that is not always how it works. I have seen cases with citizenship in particular, where they have taken so long to process it that at some point they come back and say, okay, we need this document again. That shouldn't be fair, but sometimes it happens. Now, I could see a justification for them asking for a new background check, because it's related to your criminal record, and you could turn it in and then go commit a bunch of crimes. I mean, look, I know you're not going to do that. You're all good people. But in the eyes of the government, they don't know you like I know you. So they may ask you to redo a document, and it's within their right to make you do a document. But from my experience and the experience of our clients and everyone I've ever talked to, that is a rare case. So that should not happen, but be prepared if it does. So a couple of the guides that we can send you is we have a guide on how to prepare your government documents for Croatia. We can send that to you. We also have a document on a guide on how to obtain your background check for, I think we had 15 different countries on that guide last I checked. So we can send both of those to you. And if you want them, feel free to send us a DM. Oh, I guess we have another one. We do also have another guide on the difference between apostille and full legalization. That's important too, because in this, it's related. She's asking about your foreign document expires. Well, those foreign documents, they have to have an apostille put them, or if your country is not in the apostille convention, it needs to be legalized. If you have no earthly idea what I'm talking about, send us a DM and say, Sarah, I do not know what you're talking about. And Danielle, my lovely social media manager, rock star lady, will send you our guide on apostille versus full legalization so you can understand what that means. There are some countries who are exempt from apostille. That's really nice for them. The United States is not one of those places. All right, thank you so much, Katie. So our next, is this our last? Yes, this is our last question for the week. So this comes from Daniel on email. Watched with interest a recent Instagram Q&A. He means 5 Question Friday. You speak to the question regarding private beaches. Well, for the past few years, we have been visiting a beach area in Drage near Pakostane, Biograd, near Zadar. In this beach area, there are a few camps. When you walk along the beach, once you get to the camp, you are forbidden to continue along the beach. There is always someone there keeping you from proceeding. You have to go all the way around to get to the other side where the other camps let you go. One time, we put up a fuss and were told they indeed have exclusive rights to their beachfront. I wonder how often this is the case. Have you heard of such things happening elsewhere? So, I want to connect the dots first. So a few 5 Question Fridays ago, it was definitely this year. I don't know which episode it was, but probably in February would be my guess is when we did this one. And we talked about privatization of beaches because they're about to change the law to prevent privatization of beaches. I mean, they already have stuff in place, but this new law is going to make it a lot more serious, which is good. It's very, very good. Now, nobody can own the beach, but people can get concessions to use the beach. Now, what I want to say is there are certain camps that do have concessions for the use of the beaches for private use, but they cannot put a fence up. That is not allowed. Now, there is a city plan, municipality plan, for each year that includes the concessions that have been approved. The concession approvals are done for 1 year by the city or municipality.